Okay, I want to take you through the, right before lunch, I want to put a little model in your head. This is an archetypal journey. And this is what I think of as the kind of the journey of the way power works in you, the way power speaks to you, the eruption of it, movement of it, the way it kind of rumbles through you. And it works like this, and it works like this on the macro and on the micro, so that everything is duplicated, macro, micro. Nothing exists by itself. Whatever you see can be found on a macro or micro. That's the way life is. It's patterns. We're patterns. We have archetypal patterns. Nature is patterns. Everything is duplicated. There's nothing that exists unique to itself. So, the way power erupts, and I think this pattern was kind of established, I kind of saw the similarity in the way we moved from the nuclear age, the kind of rhythm of the 60s, 70s, 80s onward, and it kind of is the way we do. And the first stage of something erupting in you is that when you are moving from any form of tribal thought, any form of a way that you want to break out of a way of thinking. So I want you to think about something that when you've thought, this thought form is suffocating me. I've got to get out of this. Okay, maybe it's a type of relationship with something, but I want you to put it really in something very tribal. Maybe a power play with a mother or a mother-in-law or somebody, but you think, so you know what it's like to be in a thought form that's suffocating, a habit, a routine, and you think, I just can't do this anymore. I can't, so you know what I mean? And you rarely ever, the first time your gut gets you get the message, you don't fit in this thought form anymore, get out. You rarely ever hear that the first time and say, oh, okay. I don't fit in this anymore, okay, no problem. Okay, I'll inform everybody that I don't fit in this thought form anymore, and that will be that. Okay, and all will be well. I'll let them know. And I remember, like when I was growing up, and the way things were cooked on my father's side of the family, and on my mother's, and they, of course, were from Europe, and this was how it was done, and that's how my one grandmother made it, and that's how the other one, and these were not people you argue with. These were true matriarchs in ways that don't exist anymore. I rarely meet a matriarch like I had when I was growing up, right? You have to earn that status. You have to raise the clan. You have to be there. You can't have a bunch of divorces and be a matriarch. You can't have it. It just doesn't happen. Okay? So you have to have a certain kind of family structure for that. And these were classic matriarchs, and this was the way it was. And so when we were growing up and we were beginning to fall into that every Sunday, that's what you did. There came a point where when you were a teenager, this isn't what you wanted your Sunday to be about. And it was like, I've got to tell them no on this Sunday. And it was like the biggest, huge no I was ever going to yell in my life for the first time, saying no to going to her house. Ah! That fell. She's in here. I'm coming, I'll be there, I mean it. Wow, I told you. We have to open this for air. Wait. No? Wow. Okay, well, that's okay. Okay, well, okay. That's okay. Can you find David? Did he evaporate? Yeah, thanks. So, yeah, maybe because that just kept falling. But anyway.
That's a matriarch.
Right, my matriarch. So, you know, when you feel like I got to get out of this thought form because the thought form's suffocating me. And thank you. You know what it's like to break out, and you know that's. But in order to actually do that, you have to build momentum. So I want you to think of thought forms at that level that, you know, I have to break out of this thought, this dynamic. That kind of fell. Do you think we'll be all right?
I'm going to move it back up.
It's okay. Okay. All right. So the first thing you're going to do is you have to build the momentum to stage a revolution. So the operative word here is that when you are ready to break a thought form, to break out of a pattern, your first stage is always revolution. Just like it was in the 60s, to stage a revolution socially, big, just like it was in the American Revolution, when they want to break out of a huge thought form about the way government is. Revolution is the first stage. Whether it's on the micro, on the macro, or in you and as a mini micro. When you want to break out of a pattern, that you realize I've got to get out of this pattern. I don't care if it is personal, if it's a sexual pattern, if it is a I don't care what it is. When you realize I've got to get out of this archetypal pattern now. I'm in the walls of it. It's this. I've got to get out. I've got to get out. It's very rare. Your intuition will instantly start saying to you, okay, pattern's too small now. And you're going to get that as conflict. So you'll get the signal. You will go into conflict that the pattern's getting small. You'll start feeling suffocated. You'll begin to express that suffocation in public by becoming, now watch this, the walls, here are the walls of you. The walls of the pattern get smaller and smaller, and you will get equally short-tempered. Okay? So pretty soon you'll lose your temper in 1 hour, half hour, 15 minutes, and now you're nothing but a temper. Okay? Because this is what you call the fuse. This is the length of your fuse. And your fuse will continue to come in because you are getting increasingly short-tempered. Okay, so you get it here. Now, when you are in your revolution, and this is true, and this is a jewel for your pouch, whether it's you or anyone else, because this is archetypal, which means it's true for everybody and everything. During a revolutionary breakout, you are never really that clear about what you want. You are just sure about what you don't want. So if while you're screaming in the revolution, if someone said, "What do you want? Just tell me what you want." They don't know. Don't ask someone when they're revolting what they want. You don't ask someone when they're vomiting what they want for dinner. Right? You don't do that. This is when they are revolting. Okay? They're revolting. They're getting it out. You are breaking out. So you have to understand this about yourself. When you are breaking through a power restriction, something that you think, I got to get out of this thought form, when you're breaking through it, don't demand of yourself to have information about your next stage when you are simply at the stage of dealing with what you don't want. You're not in a position to know what you do want. You are simply dealing with what you don't want. You have to even understand your own power stages so that you don't jam your power system. Okay? So the first stage is your revolution. Now the next stage that you will go through, that everybody goes through, that our society goes through, because this is the archetype, is that once you revolt, and then just think of the 60s, like in the United States, for example. Once there was the social revolution, the civil revolution, the sexual revolution, the hippie revolution, all of that, what happened in the 70s? It calmed down. Because once somebody says, okay, now I know what you don't want, now you're like this, that's right. And now the revolution's over. And it's all quiet. There's shrapnel everywhere. Once you revolt, the revolution, then you have to involute. And this is something I want you to understand about the law of balance. Everything is regulated by the law of balance. So once you revolt, you've got to involute. And you have to go, so you come back to balance. So now you have to go, I don't know what I want, leave me alone, I'll think about it. So now it's involute time. So now you have to kind of think, I don't know, now that I got rid of what I don't want, I got to clear it out and figure out what I do. So this is a very, very, very vulnerable place you go post-revolution. It's very vulnerable because you're a new person. When you finally articulate and do something about what you don't want, for many times you're not used to being empty and saying, what is it I do want? Or listening to yourself. Actually listening. And when you talk about what empowers you, listening to yourself is one of the techniques you give yourself that empowers you. Empowerment is not about you telling others what you want. Who cares? Empowerment is about you respecting yourself enough to listen to yourself. It's no one else's business to give you something. You're the one in charge of you. You're the one in charge of respecting you. You're the one in charge of taking care of you. You. So you're the one in charge of listening to you. Of listening to you. Of really understanding, what am I feeling? It's no one else's responsibility to know what you're feeling. Nobody. It's not even their responsibility to care about what you're feeling, believe it or not. It's a luxury if they do. But you're the one who has to know what you're feeling and be very clear about it. And not punish others because they don't attend to your feelings. You are in charge of that. So after you revolt, you have to think, I don't know, who am I? What do I want? This is a very deep and profound time that you come in and you think, what do I want? You can get lost on this journey. Because then you realize claiming what you want is a big deal. Actually saying, this is what I want to be. This is what I want to do. This is what I want to say. This is what I want to contribute. This is who I am. Actually saying those sentences is a big deal. because you set yourself into motion. It's a lot easier saying, I'm not sure. Or it's a lot easier to make vague things like, I know I was born for something. Oh, God, if I ever hear that again. And to keep yourself in the potential world, but you'll accomplish nothing. That this, like, with the involution, you finally step forward. And what people always do is, come here, they start here. They start in the first column, and generally, the first stage of involuting, when they step forward, is that they'll involute through fashion. Rather than actually say who they are, actually commit with power, they will dress differently because there's no commitment there. They will wear yoga beads and Buddha beads and do things differently with their hair and their this or that, because they'll change their outside because there's no commitment to that whatsoever. They'll change their diet. They'll say they're eating differently. All of which is to begin to wade in the water of their new identity without actually making a commitment. So you're a vegetarian now? Maybe. Vegan? Maybe. Maybe I am, maybe I'm not. But what I am saying in this first stage of involuting is I am different than the person who revolted. And I need you to know it. So from the involution, you move on to the third stage, and here's where you build your moon unit. The third stage is narcissism. Because now you're really getting into yourself. And the third stage is where you really decide it's all about me. I think I like this all about me stuff. And if you look at the 60s, 70s, and 80s, by the time they got to the 80s, those hippies turned into big investors. And so much for that life, and they became Silicon Valley, and they became Microsoft, and they became the biggest investors and the first billionaires. And Republicans. So they really went for it. And it, this idea that you then swing into, now that I see that I'm a me, it's all about me. And this was where I saw in why people don't heal. We begin to see our power, but we generally enter our power through our back door, which is the power of our woundedness, the power of our fragileness, the power of complaining, the power of not our strongest features. We have to examine this to be sure. We have to go there. But if we make the moon unit too comfortable, we don't get out. And we don't get to the next step, which is our evolution. The stage of narcissism is essential. But if it becomes permanent, you implode. You never get out. And this is the stage where it begins to, you end up sealed in your moon unit, breathing your own oxygen, becoming depressed, anxiety. You begin recycling your spiritual oxygen. And you can't get out. You can't get out. Because you're not making one progressive decision. You're jamming your own progress. Because you become afraid to keep going on. And if I've noticed this incredible quantum leap in depression, anxiety, legal medication, When in fact, with all of the therapies available, all of the things, we should be expanding in our consciousness, and in fact that's shutting down. For all of these 70 years we've had available in spirituality, the road that's opening up is the medicated one, the narcissism one, versus the other one. It's the all about me road, the medicated one, instead of the other one. So the fourth one is, I got to get out of myself. I got to get out. Once you kind of are into, okay, you start realizing, all right, I got my wounds, I got this. Now how do I get out of here? How do I make the most of this life? How do I get myself into present time? How do I use the laws I've learned? How do I apply everything I'm learning about the cosmos to myself? How do I have a spiritual practice? How do I actually empower myself? There's only, how do I apply what I know instead of thinking I need to know more? Most people have enough in their head already, but they don't live it. You don't need to know more that you're not going to use. It's like the way I shop. I don't need to buy more clothes I'm not going to wear. Right? Yeah? So that next step is that evolution. We don't need to read more about kindness. We need to be kind. Right? We don't. All right, so now it's time to actually live the power journey. And that's where we're at. And I am absolutely convinced that one of the reasons why madness is on the rise, schizophrenia, bipolar, all of these, is because we are literally recycling our own intuitive error. We're not, and we don't have the same sacred resources that we once had. We've done away with holy language. So we no longer have the capacity to recognize the types of sufferings and the remedies. We don't recognize anymore that a person is suffering from guilt, and that the only remedy for it is some kind of confession, not therapy. Therapy does not heal sin. And we don't get that, we don't even use that word anymore, but in fact, let me tell you something. When you consciously act against another person, the reason why people can't forgive is not like when someone says, oh, I'm trying to forgive, I'm trying. You look so puzzled here. What's that look for? Okay. When someone says, I'm trying to forgive, what they're really meaning is, I still want to punish them. We don't speak honestly at all. We still cover it in therapeutic ease so we look good, instead of actually saying, I'm vengeful. The problem is I'm vengeful and I'm not dealing with it. Number two is, what is sin? You have to get out of this idea that it's Catholic. Okay? Do you know what people don't forgive? Here's what, this is the truth. The reason forgiveness is so difficult is not the actual act, believe it or not. It's not the act that I actually stole Hannah's van. She could get over that. Maybe I shouldn't use Hannah. All right, but say Anne. Say I did something to Anne. But I stole her van or did something. And I said to her, I really didn't mean to hurt you. Now, the actual act of stealing the van is probably something she could get over. But what she can't get over is the lie. The lie when I said I never meant to hurt her. Because what she knows, like what everybody knows, is that it was conscious. Is that there was probably a second in which I thought about, Jesus, if I steal her van, it's going to change her life. She's got kids. She's going to have to walk They're going to have to walk to school. That's going to be hard on them. The winter. It's going to, and then she's going to lose her job. She won't be able to go to work on time. But I need it because I want to go and meet this guy and have a fling, and it's all about me. And so, oh well. I mean, she's going to lose. Now her kids won't eat. But now I tell her, I don't know. Here's your van back, one wheel. Hey, but I never meant to hurt you. Now the unforgiving part is she knows I lied, that I actually thought about her. Now what is a sin? A sin is the conscious choice. I'm totally conscious that I'm going to harm her life, and it doesn't stop me. That's what's called a sin. That's why we use that word. And it's called for. It's not a boo-boo. It's not a bummer. It's a sin. And what it means is my soul knew exactly what it was doing. Absolutely. It's the conscious choice to harm another. That is not a boo-boo. Not a boo-boo. It's called a sin. And how one relieves oneself of that is I have to say to this person, I have to talk to you. Want to know something? That was conscious. I knew exactly what I was doing. I did think about you, and it didn't matter. And I thought about your children, and I knew what you would have to go through. And it didn't matter. I weighed it against what I wanted, and I consciously chose to hurt the lot of you. My soul sinned against yours, and that's the bottom line. And I'm asking for forgiveness. That's the real thing. And you know what? All the therapy in the world won't get you out of that until you own it. Until you own it. Yeah. And that's not Catholic, by the way. That's just the way the soul works.
So I have a question that might seem sort of infantile. It sort of is. The answer might just be karma, which I'll take that, but I'm asking you because maybe you have a different answer than that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just based on what you just spoke about. It seems when you talk about why people don't heal, all these reasons, we lie to ourselves, we don't forgive, all of these things. But on the flip side of that, what I want to know, and this is my small self that does want retribution and punishment, I'll own that. I want to know...
You're not alone.
Thank you. I want to know why it seems to be that in this time, and it's been in times past, but very strongly right now, there is actually not only not punishment, disease, death, destruction, but actually honoring and showering of gifts and wealth to people that are sinning, actively sinning. I want to know why Mitch and Donald and Brett
Gee, I wonder who you're talking about. Yeah. Are not dying?
Why aren't they dying of cancer? I mean, that's a real question.
All right, easy on that. Okay. Yeah, well, Were you reading my diary? No, okay. All right, okay, no. Stop. All right, let me talk about it this way. At another time, the question would be, how come Hitler's not dying? At another time, it could be, it doesn't matter. Okay, it doesn't matter. And so, you asked the question from here, and I want us to go here. And it's real hard to crawl up these stairs, but we're going to crawl up the stairs. Otherwise, the answer will never make sense to you. Because when we're down here, and this is about power. So long as you're on the first floor, every issue you see in the world is you versus that. You versus that. Friend or foe, enemy or not. You will always line up the world. And I want you to see yourself in the building looking out the window, staring at the world saying, friend or foe, versus standing up at the penthouse, looking at the world, breathing with it, and seeing it as an archetypal theater in which your patterns flow through you and into the pattern of all creation, so that the teacher in me is engaged in teacher. The mystic in me is engaged in mystic. And I see whatever is happening in this moment in my nation as yet the awakening of the slave master archetype, which has its strong roots in the birth of the United States of America. And it has risen again in full formation. The slave master. It is also a nation with the strong entrepreneur archetype, the strong pioneer. But make no mistake, its axis is slave master. And if you can see any nation, just like the nation of Britain is royal, and what's happening in that nation is its royalty archetype is being diminished. And in ours, our archetype now, our archetypal pattern is up in a crisis situation. And because it is time to go into a global cooperative planet. Okay? Russia's archetype is the Holy Mother, Mother Russia, and the Tsar. And so what they have is a leader who they've elevated to the Tsar, who's taken on the guise of the Tsar, trying to recover the landmass of the Romanovs. They want that Tsar figure again. Okay, in history, the historic patterns of world conflict have re-engaged, and the exact war conflicts. I believe it or not, I'm answering this question, but the size of the map you have to really in your head. The pattern that started World War I. So I want you to just go and look at the archetypal pattern above you. I want you to see Europe in its 1914. And there's the Austro-Hungary Empire, and Serbia's gargantuan, not the size. Now these nations are all reshaped. And Russia's about to undergo its transition from the Tsarist to a Russian revolution, and all of these forces are waging. But what they have in common is monarch. It's time for the end of the age of monarch. And there's a whole plot to bring down Europe so that industry can come in and the world of capitalism can take over the monarchies, chop them up again and redistribute them. And they want that route through Serbia, much too big a country, to get to the Black Sea and the Bosporus for British petroleum. Hello, Lawrence of Arabia, and into Saudi. So we must have a war. And so what do? They engage with Serbia. And what do? Go to Iran, go to Iraq and Serbia. The map of the war getting into Iraq with Bush. Let us both give them a list of things, like they did to Serbia. Here's the list of 10 things, says Germany. You either do these 10 things or we shall invade you. Do these 10 things, Saddam, or we shall invade you for your weapons of mass destruction. They duplicated the exact same pattern, both knowing, as the Germans did with the Serbs, we will invade you. We've always intended to invade you. We want your oil. We always intended to invade Iraq. It didn't matter what they were doing. We want your oil. Why? Because we wanted to redistribute the power in the Middle East and the empires of the Middle East. We always intended to do that. It was always a part It was always a part. This is all part of this. Now let's go back to the United States. You have to understand the Civil War has been reenacted. It was engaged when Obama got in, and Mitch McConnell was the new Jefferson Davis, and he declares to all the Southern gentlemen, let's secede from the Union. And the fight like the shot fired across Fort Sumter was Cheney not standing up at Obama's inauguration, claiming he had a bad back, and that was the first gunshot. It's official. Now, they withdraw their support from the North, they shut down the Congress, and we're at war, symbolically and archetypally. So what's really going on at a whole different level is Jesus, Mary, and Joseph. Wait a minute, I'm not done. I do history. If you don't understand history here, you'll never understand it anywhere. This is the whole, I haven't even touched with Russia and England and the Middle East and Africa. We haven't even gone into all these countries. Every one of them is participating in this, don't you see? But it's a redistribution of power. Power. It's a redistribution, and as the chaos goes here, in order to understand what happened to our country, you have to go understand this archetypal pattern all the way back from the 60s, where you jump into to the Kennedys with Camelot. And this pivotal moment of a family that says, of Jackie and JFK, who said we could do peace, we could become world, we could take the American vision, the political birth vision, and actually elevate it to a Camelot peace, because look what we've got now. We're the first global nuclear power. We could take it there. We could challenge, be mindful of the wisdom of Eisenhower and the military-industrial complex. We could do this. And there's Johnson in the background, and there's the military-industrial complex screaming about going into Vietnam, and boom, they kill him. And the very next day, Jackie still has blood on her hands, and he signs let's go to war. Let's go to war. And into Vietnam we went. And it became this decade of breaking these patterns, killing JFK, Martin Luther King, all these potential, almost like new founding fathers. Almost like new founding fathers. And we murdered them all. And then what happened was, the spiritual consciousness erupted in that era too. Like our nuclear consciousness was born like hippies, saying you've got to get to your light as soon as you can, because look, darkness has gone nuclear too. And so the drug industry, and so we jumped into our consciousness full speed ahead with the hippie age and the love age and all of this, but we put the brakes on. We put the brakes on. Because that age, we couldn't get through the challenge of it, and pretty soon we became the most bitter, self-centered people that decided to raise their children without any connection to this country, without connections to God or connections to this country, connections to their citizenship, connections to their civics. And the government took full advantage of that. Reagan stepped in and said, we got to dumb down these people. And then Reagan merged the government with the evangelicals and said, this is good partnership, evangelicals and Republicans, good partnership. So that formed a very different track. Nothing is what it appears to be just today. You must know the seeds of everything. And what we are looking at is the seeds of what it means to assume that all the comfort will always be here, but none of the responsibility for the management of freedom. And to just get pissy because of a judge, without realizing, wait a minute here, you should have been managing civics all along, not this Kavanaugh creature. We should have been managing our evolution all along. We should have been managing our consciousness a little bit better all along, not just when we decide to get pissy about, you shouldn't have touched me. Excuse me. You should have been teaching civics, civil rights, boundaries, and not just at this last minute. What kind of stunt was that? Do you understand? It's like our country is getting dismantled. We have not encouraged generations to be politically conscious. They've assumed that the purpose of the United States was shopping instead of freedom. They don't know the Constitution. They don't know the Bill of Rights. They think it's all about gun control. And so it's got to be reborn. It's getting reborn.
Can I go one step further? Because I see what you're saying, not fully, but I see what you're saying. I think there are forces unleashed that obviously are historical, but I want to understand on an actual, like, you talk about that these inviolable laws, not habits of nature, but laws. And so if I have a client or a friend or a person that's suffering from cancer because X, Y, and Z, it's a real question. I don't understand how people that are so evil, whatever forces of history have brought them, are not.
You know why? I'll put it real simple. Because
Because
you've reduced it to very, very simplistic terms. That you've taken you've taken the simple formula that because you're dark, you should be dead.
Yeah, that's true.
And it's just simply not like that. And I probably should have said that 20 minutes ago. But and I apologize for that. But it's not like that. Nothing's that simple. It's not that logical. If it was, wouldn't it be nice? But it's not. And further, and now I'm going to complicate it. That's mathematics down here, that for every one problem there's one solution, and that if I'm sick I must have done something wrong. And if they're not sick, this is not making sense. Well, it shouldn't make sense. And not only that, you have no idea what's really playing out, even with the monster of certain monstrosities. But you don't know, because it's the other side of the coin. It's the other side of coins of, so this is what happens when we drop the ball. This is what happens if you become a sloppy captain on your ship. If you cease to train yourself because the waters seem to be calm for a while, you're going to be a very bad captain when the waters get rough, and you will abuse your passengers out of fear. You will become abusive because that will be your fear and insecurity. And we've become abusive as a country out of insecurity because we've lost ourselves. We've lost ourselves. We don't trust our creativity anymore. We don't trust anything about ourselves. This is us now. We don't trust anything about ourselves anymore. We don't trust our fellow Americans. How dare they tell us not to trust our own countrymen? How dare they? How dare they? Now, I don't want to go there anymore. But when you look at illness and health, don't reduce anything to logic, because it's not. It's mystical. Mystical means that that the cause could also be a learning. Don't assume negativity ever, and don't ever assume that the reason someone's ill has anything to do with them or with something that has happened. It could be something that's coming in. a day they have not yet lived. Or maybe they're being directed to make a decision. Don't reduce it to logic so that you think that you're supposed to understand. One of the things I learned as a medical intuitive is I'm not privy to everything. Who do I think? Just because you want to know doesn't mean I can tell you. I'm not guided by your curiosity. I'm guided by only what I am allowed to see, not by your curiosity or your insatiable need to know about you. I can only see so far, and heaven does not. Heaven protects you from your own self. You know, and so it's as simple as that. This world is not governed by things. We live in a hologram. We don't live in where the things are happening simultaneously. Sometimes a person who should be dead by my standards is living off the goodness they've done before. Hard as that is to imagine. Or sometimes their task is to reflect our greed. To be a perfect reflection of our collective greed, our collective evil, our collective misogyny, our collective racism, our collective everything. What a perfect reflection of what we've become. Yes. Wait a minute, mic on the way.
Thank you. You talked about different levels of consciousness and the different chakras, but I've never heard you talk about the 9th and the 10th chakras. I know that I've heard you refer to the 8th as archetypal.
The 10th is like the realm of, I just call it the laws. The mystical laws. I think just the order of the universe. To me, the 10th is just, the 10th chakra is simply order, the laws. The 10th realm, like the governing system, the governing body. Think of it as the government. The governing laws.
So where do miracles fit in then? Is that the 11th? Or?
No, miracles don't have it. Miracles work like this. A miracle is when heaven bends the laws of the universe just for you. The most intimate thing in the world. And it's a miracle is about you having the strength of soul to let God come that close. Really, it's my best way to explain how a miracle, that you are strong enough to let God come that close to you. Most people are not. It's not about lighting candles and dancing under a moon and, building churches and do all that nonsense. A miracle. What prevents people from having miracles happen in their life is they're terrified of having that kind of intimate contact with God. And for the most part, and this is again about power, and this we'll talk about that after lunch perhaps, we'll start there. And that's what is self-esteem. Because if that sense of who you are here is when you're going through the stages of empowerment, how much of your power comes from what you get from others, and how much others will stop you from doing something. What will they say? What will they say? What will they do? What will they think? When in fact, you'll hear your angel saying, will you please do this? What will they say? So now you're pitted against the guidance from within and the voice from without. And which one will you rely on? What is a miracle exactly? A miracle is an experience only you have, that you cannot prove, that you can't, that everyone will question, including questioning your sanity, questioning your judgment, questioning your integrity. Because I've seen it happen, I know this for a fact. Questioning whether you really described maybe you weren't sick in the first place. Maybe you were imagining it. The strength of soul you have to withstand the lack of faith that will be coming towards you. The tsunami of doubt that you'll be buried in is so intense that most people can't take it. They simply can't. And the rage that they would have, like, you don't believe me, will make them sicker than the disease they had in the first place. So very few people can actually undergo a miracle and actually handle it. Between the rage and the jealousy of others, their doubt, your capacity to protect yourself, to actually say, I did have this, and that's it, now excuse me. And not debate it, not be able to put up the wall and say, your doubt is not my issue. Goodbye. Takes a lot. Does that make sense to you now?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
You know? Yes, my darling. My Hannah Banana.
I got one life question for you.
Okay, wait a minute. You have to have a microphone.
Oh, okay. Since
No, it goes like this. You really have to put it here.
Oh, okay. Since I don't know my essence, and I haven't experienced my oneness with everyone. No. This is full baked.
Go.
Full baked. So I still have envy in my heart, and I still operate out of fear and insecurity. And I don't want to be an abusive or mean person. So how do I fix that without, since I'm not one of the enlightened people, so how do I fix that? Because I don't want to have any envy in my heart. I want to get the envy out of my heart, and I don't want to operate out of fear.
Okay. You know what? I'm going to tell you to do what I did. This is my best remedy. I really almost died from my rage at people in my former company. I bled to death. I ended up in the emergency room. 12 years of rage. Okay? And finally, couldn't deal with myself. Finally said the prayer, this is not working down here for me. So just don't let my rage hurt them anymore. I swear to you, Hannah, it was gone and it was lifted. Just like that. It was gone. I simply said, please, if I don't know what to do to get rid of this, but I'm asking you, don't let this rage hurt them anymore. Let it go to you instead of them. Boom. Just say, let my envy go to you and not them. Protect everyone from my envy. So if I'm going to be envious, you eat it. Okay, I need to send you to lunch. Okay.